Welcome to What Writers Should Know. I am Erica Lance. I'm an author, but I'm also the CEO and founder of Horsemen Publications and Accomplishing Innovation Press and the Little Horseman. Valerie, introduce yourself, my
You
friend.
seem breathless, Erica.
I'm a little breathless. I'm going to take a sip of my cherry chai, which I figured out how to make myself in my Mothman cup I got at the Mothman convention.
Oh, so jealous. For those who don't know me, I'm Valerie Willis. I'm a co-founder of Horsemen, but more infamously, award-winning fantasy romance author who loves introducing mythology and things, but also as an expert typesetter and book designer. So that's why I wrote this chaos.
Writer's Bane Formatting 101. Links in the show notes. So we're talking today. I love the title of this. Stop confusing your designer. Prep your book the right way. What does that mean? What does that mean? How do authors confuse their designers?
Oh my God. As a typesetter, I've seen a lot of things, and I've had to sit down, and you know this, Erica, because we went through this a little bit with trying to design Eerie Travel's Dark Side of Smoky Mountains, right? I'm like, is this on the same? Oh God, it's so pretty.
It's a very, very pretty book. But yes,
yeah,
talk about that.
So, for instance, if you're not using your styles and heading styles, whether you're writing in G-Docs, Word, Scrivener, they all have these styles, right? Put in them. And I cannot express how important it is to know what those levels are and make sure that those levels are the same for certain content, especially when you start deep diving into nonfiction kind of area, right? Like one of the things that I was like, okay, is Erica Eats within this scope? Is this a heading 2 or is this heading 1, like your sections and stuff like that? Because it clues us in as a designer where the more important, harder hitting sections are, and then what is just a headline, right? So a lot of times in a fiction work, what I do as a author is heading 1 says chapter 1. That's forward chapter 1. All, what else? My dedication is usually a heading 1.
Acknowledgements.
My about the author is a heading 1. And then heading 2 usually indicates a subhead within that, or maybe the title for it. So in my current manuscript, I accidentally reanimated Billionaire's Hellhound. That's such a mouthful. Heading 1 is
nobody's sad about that.
No one is sad about it at all. I know. I even the editors even knocking at my door and is like, "Are you done yet?" Heading 1 is the chapter. Heading 2 is the title for it to make it easier on the designer to make a decision of how they want to format. Heading 3 is where I say what the date or time is. And then heading 4, I haven't decided if I'm going to keep or not, but that says what character's POV each chapter is in. But I divided them out in different styles so I can either dump them or change how they're formatted so that the typesetter can change how they're formatted. Now, in like a nonfiction, you're going to do similar stuff, right? You're going to have heading 1 might be where your sections are. In a textbook, we see this, right? This is all going to be additions and subtractions section, and this is going to be multiplication section. That's where your heading 1 falls. And then heading 2 is going to be chapter 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, or chapter 2.1, 2. And so on, right? And then your heading 3 might either be subheads under that, or it might be titling. So you have to divide these out in those styles and make sure you're consistent with how you're assigning them, because it does matter when it hits the typesetter and designer and even the editor's desk. It's easier for us to see where you're going with it and how you're organizing your thoughts, your chapters, and things like that. So that's one major, very big, blaring way that you're prepping your work the right way for your designer to be confused less or understand how they should be designing that book for you in the long run. So
yes, and it seems to me that when we're talking about this, it also is for yourself to keep track. Because even if you don't give it to a typesetter, for instance, and you decide to typeset it yourself or do whatever, if you don't have that consistency, your book will be a mess, and it will be very hard for you to tell. And one thing that's very cool is using the headings and subheadings and stuff like that. You can, with usually it's on the left-hand side, you can jump to different areas. You want to jump and check something in chapter 3 your editor mentioned or something. You can go right to chapter 3, where if it's just one long document, you may be scrolling for a while to find chapter 3.
And that's another great reason. Most of these word processor programs now utilize that same heading system to auto create table of contents for you. You can just put insert table of contents, and it's going to auto pull the heading and populate it, and then you just refresh it as you write. And it's same thing, like you said, when you pull up, I know in Word in particular, it's called the navigation pane on the left, and the headings subdivision. Now I can see and jump to those different chapters. And depending on your user settings, you could even have it or allow it to let you drag and drop and reorganize those chapters in different orders.
That's exciting.
Yes.
So we're talking. I know a lot of people might be listening, going, "This stuff saves you time in the future, my writer friends." It doesn't matter what you're writing, even if you're just writing something for work. Like I've written employee handbooks. I utilize these tools because otherwise, jumping around, it's even what if you want to turn it into a PDF, can be used as a bookmark in the PDF system if you do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about taking a manuscript and going from Scrivener and then opening it in Word and then opening it in Google Docs, because I know you love it. Love it when authors do that. It's your favorite thing in the world. You are like, you know what would be great is if you tried to maybe convert it to a PDF and then convert it back to Word.
Oh, no.
So as I see your head blowing up,
yes.
Why is that a problem? I mean, they're all Word, they're all writing tools. Why is it a problem, Valerie?
Okay, so here are things that you should keep in mind. Word is king in the industry, I think, when it comes to this stuff, because it's based off of XML, HTML coding, and because of that, Word converts into ebook very cleanly, depending on the setup of that publisher or designer has, right? And Word also plays well and nicely with InDesign, and there's plenty of plugins between the two for us designers to be able to make a book beautiful. But here's where things get complicated. If you're using Word and you're copy pasting, I always say pasta. I like the fact that it's just a
I know you like copy
spaghetti
pasta.
mash.
I was going to clarify for everybody when
That's how I envision copy paste every time. It's just a mangled spaghetti blop on a page with unwanted sauce everywhere. That's
just
what
splatter.
As a design, it splatters. And a lot of times when you're copying and pasting, especially if you're taking public domain content that is on a website and you're trying to plug it in or quote it, you want to scrub that. There is actually a clear formatting little eraser icon in Word for this, and you'll see those same tools in Scrivener and GDocs. So know that these programs all use similar under hidden coding that you can't see, that ends up derailing an entire process as far down as your ebook creation. 2, when you go from GDocs to Word, clear and accept all changes, clear all your comments out, wipe it clean before you export it for Word. The reason is it will dump those comments sometimes mid-paragraph or drop a paragraph, or there's something about it that's not perfect. And it sometimes scrambles stuff when it goes from GDoc to Word format. And though that is the option, you can go to on a GDoc, you can go to export as a Microsoft Word document, know that you want to scrub it before you do that, because it likes to place weird coding in it, because it's not perfect. Even less perfect from that is PDF's claim, Acrobat's claim, that they can convert a PDF to Word document. No. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it take the word is and make it the number 15. Just imagine that chaos, and it confusing letters on occasion. And it will put a hard return at the end of every line, and you don't want that. That
No,
is
and
a
I think a lot of
nightmare.
people don't realize, for instance, that when you just take that example you gave where you say it takes is and turns it to 15, unless you read every single line, you're not going to see that, because it isn't a typo. It is a number. It didn't change it to like wingdings in the middle of that. But even if it did, it's going to think you did that intentionally. Like, even with all the AI and stuff like that, it's only as smart as it thinks. And so, yeah, it might catch it grammar wise, why is there 15 in the middle of the sentence? But it won't necessarily catch it when it's looking for spelling errors or something like that. The document's going to look clean unless you do a find all the grammatical errors. And you got to hope, my fingers crossed, that you catch it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that those weird characters do not convert well when you're talking about an ebook, or if you send a book to print, you will have errors. And here's the thing that I thought was interesting, and maybe you remember what it is. We had a book print, and it printed with like X's across the page.
Yeah.
And
like
they
really
weren't
weird.
on. Like, if you visibly looked at the document, they weren't there. But when it printed at the printer, these giant X's were across the page. I don't remember what caused that, but it was a stray, weird character.
It was a character that I ended up having to convert as an image and do teeny tiny image placement to get the effect. And that's something as writers, especially with the modern age, right? And especially with contemporary or more modern writing, we're using emojis, right? But the problem is, not every print house printer is going to be font friendly enough to recognize emoji font types and font faces. So always make sure you convert those to some sort of image or create outlines. There's several options depending what it is, or make sure that that font is embedded. But even then, in that scenario, we even opened the PDF and realized that font was embedded and it still bugged out. So there's always a risk factor going from manuscript to print, right? With those choices that we make. And sometimes we can do everything we can to prevent it, but even at that point, we had it embedded. We've done this a million times, but it was our first time using that font and doing a manuscript with heavy emojis and the text message type conversation. So that was learning a lesson the hard way for us, and that it's just best practice to convert that to an image. And you should let your typesetter and designer know. Say, hey, I have emojis. Can you, and then you can do an extra step, especially as a self-publisher when you're the boss, make sure to tell them, convert these to images, create outlines on these, because I want to make sure they print properly. And that's part of that knowledge base, right? That's why I wrote Formatting 101, because I think I even added a section in here where I talk about the risk of using wingdings. Like, wingdings has been around long enough that most of the time it's not a problem if you're using wingdings, the classic. But you start using some of these newer ones with the emojis and things like that, and it's a shot in the dark. And sometimes it only recognizes some of the characters and not the whole character face. Another fear and thing that's happening a lot, because a lot of software is converting to browser based. And this is something I've experienced at my day job recently. All these new browser based reforms that are happening, especially coming this year, next year, anything using brackets or the curly cues disappears. because it's getting recognized as programming code.
Oh, that's exciting. So if I put something in a bracket just to mention some side thing, it's going to be gone. And I wonder, does it make it all the way disappear? So now that thought is shortened, or does it make a blank space?
It just makes it all the way disappear. So it's very throwing. And that's going to be anywhere that you're placing your font and text onto like a web novel or browser based thing.
Or ebook.
Ebook, no, because the ebook programming puts it within a string, and in a string is designed and strong enough in ebook already to recognize that as is. So that's the interesting thing, because that's how I was able to prove what was going on. I was like, look, if this was recognized as a recognizable string code, like in an ebook XML coding, and you're like, what language are you talking about? And I'm like, bear with me, let me show you. Oh, and then we're able to fix it and alter the coding with what we were experiencing. But it's wild that these are things that we have to look forward to and be aware of and understand, even at a publisher or author level these days. And it's surreal. And we have to be very, I mean, I believe we use brackets to identify when something's on screen or a text message is one of our formatting, Four Horsemen's established formatting codes for dialogue type stuff. So it was like, and then I had to think about it. I was like, no, we're okay, because we don't do web novels and things like that. If we did, we'd have to just make sure that make sure the coding involved recognizes that should be with it. If it's within a string, to leave it alone. That's all it takes, but it's still that extra thought has to happen. And that's where we're at, right? Prep your book the right way. Take that extra thought to not confuse the designer.
We have scratched the surface of the deep dive that somebody can do. And this is something, whether you're an existing typesetter, you're an existing self-published author, you want to be a self-published author. Knowledge is power. Like we say that all the time, knowledge is power. And again, not everybody has different ways that they want to do things. We've just done literally thousands of books at this point. Wow. So we've made a ton of mistakes and learned from those mistakes, especially with all the different systems and softwares out there. So Val, hold up your book one more time, because I know we're going to do more on this topic, but it's called Writer's Bane Formatting 101. And will you turn it to the side, because I just want everybody to understand that this isn't a tiny little pamphlet. No. This is a monster book, and we have just scratched the surface. And it's beautifully designed and goes into how to do all of these things. You can find the link to it down below. Val, if people want to find you, how do they find you?
willisauthor.com, and from there they can find all my social media. I am on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X,
Blue Sky. You're everywhere.
I'm everywhere, and usually it's Willis Author. I think the only one that I couldn't lock in was X, and it's Valerie_Willis. But regardless, you go to willisauthor.com, you can find me and my books and go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for our continued education here. This has been What Writers Should Know. I'm Erica Lance. This has been Valerie Willis. And as always, we're just offering advice. You will find the way it will work best for you. But please like and subscribe to keep up to date. We have many more of these coming, and we will see you next time.
Ciao.